All right, good evening, everyone. I'm back. I know I took off a session or maybe two, I'm not really sure. But I'm back now, and today we're going to be making some sheet pan chocolate chip pancakes. And if we're going to be making pancakes, I mean, we should probably also make some eggs and maybe some bacon as well. Because I kind of have all of that stuff sitting around, and it's not doing much good for me, just sitting there, so I might as well eat it. So, we'll dive straight in. I'm going to try and get back in the flow of things. So we're going to start off, I've got my unsalted butter here. We're going to be using a full stick of it, plus another 3 tablespoons, which we need to be softened. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out first. There's lots of different ways to soften butter. I normally do the easy way, and I stick it in the microwave. I'm going to grab a ramekin to stick this in. Otherwise, things will quickly get very messy. And I'll just stick the rest of this stick back into the refrigerator. I store bread in my microwave to keep it away from the cat, so I always have to pull that out every time I microwave anything. If you're microwaving this, be careful, it will explode if you aren't careful, so I always put a lid on my microwave, or my bowl of butter whenever I soften butter. And my microwave actually has a softened butter option, so that's just what I'm going to be using here. Nothing terribly exciting. The cat has just reminded me that she would very much like to be fed, and it is now a whole 3 minutes past her dinner time. So I have given her some food, which she does not seem to be terribly interested in. Oh, no, there she goes. Alright, so back to the bit that's actually on camera. We're going to be getting some cold buttermilk, so I've got some here, and then it also calls for cold whole milk. I don't really keep milk on hand. Instead, what we'll be using is almond milk, which should be a 1-to-1 substitution. And we're going to end up with, looks like about 3 cups overall, so I'll grab a large I'll grab a bowl rather to put that into. We're doing enough baking that I'm actually starting to run low on measuring equipment and bowls. Alright. Got 1.5 cups of buttermilk. I actually do have buttermilk today. Normally I do the whole add vinegar trick, but not today. Today we actually have buttermilk. Put that into there. And then we will get a further 1.5 cups of almond milk. If you're baking with almond milk, get the stuff without any flavors. I prefer the unsweet original because it's just plain. It seems like all of the major almond milk makers call it the same thing, so shouldn't be too difficult to find. Alright, now that we have our almond milk and our buttermilk, I'm just going to grab a fork and gently whisk those together a little. Alright, and then we're going to be setting this aside, and I'm actually going to set it out of the way so that I don't accidentally knock it over. Alright, that's just going to sit there for a few minutes. Alright, I've already heated the oven up, so we're good there. We'll grease up the sheet pan in a minute. So now we're going to be adding all of this stuff to our food processor, which I have out for this recipe. And we will use the fantastic scale. Let's see. Barbecue, blend. Chilled ones. Buttermilk mixture. There we go. That's the 2 tablespoons of softened butter. Just need to make sure I knew where that came in at. All right. So we're going to get 3 cups of flour. So it's going to be 385 grams. This recipe, by the way, is from the New York Times Cooking. They do a fantastic job. They're one of my favorite sources of recipes, and I highly recommend them. All right, let's see here. Flour. Since I'm using a scale, I can just use a spoon to spoon the flour in, as opposed to having to be careful about compressing it and all that. That's part of why baking with weights is so nice. About another 100 grams to go. Getting close. 20 more. It's 380. 485, 385. Perfect. So that is our flour, and then sugar. We're going to need to add another 50 grams of granulated sugar, which I appear to have set the brown sugar on top of. All right, we'll tear this out. Looking for 50 grams. It's 40. That's 50. All right. 50 grams of sugar. Let's see here. Then we're mixing in our baking powder and baking soda. So a tablespoon of baking powder, which apparently ended up underneath my yeast. And a tablespoon. Just a tablespoon of baking powder, right? Yes. You don't want to mix up the baking powder and the baking soda. It doesn't end well. So I always double check. And a teaspoon of baking soda. You can get some really, well, we'll just say interesting bakes if you mix up your baking powder and your baking soda. All right. Teaspoon of baking soda. Then we'll do the salt, which we just need. It says 3/4 teaspoon, so I'll just eyeball that. It's about 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to be blending this together until it is combined. Should not take that long. this around to show this a little bit better here. There we go. All right. We're just gonna high pulse this a bit. All right. Actually, for this, I should probably be using something a little bit lower down. That should be pretty well blended. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this other butter here, prop that up there so I can still read it, and bring this back over here to point at the cutting board, because this is where we're working with the chilled butter, which can be a little bit tricky. So we're going to be taking this entire thing, we're going to be cutting it up into, well, it says into 1/2 inch cubes, but it's going to end up just being a bunch of rectangles. But essentially we're going to be cutting up this just down the entire length. I'm not too concerned about, not too concerned about getting it will be a little bit smaller. Don't want it to be too large. You know what, we're going to come along here, we're going to cut these along the other way as well. I'm trying to avoid handling these directly as much as possible. There's going to be a little bit there, but I'm trying to avoid it. I don't want to heat it up. You really do want this butter to be pretty chilled. So I pulled this out of the refrigerator right before we started. It's only been a couple minutes. It's still pretty cold, but it is starting to warm up a little bit, especially as we start to cube these, because then there's suddenly way more surface area. I'm going to quickly grab these, just toss them in here. Come on, fall apart. There we go. All right. Just kind of tossing them in on top as best as I can. Probably going to pulse it a little bit. Yeah, I'll pulse it a little bit here. Just kind of getting those incorporated. Another few. Really don't want to handle this too much. Every time it goes in, just pulsing it a little bit. Goal is just to get, smaller pieces in there that will combine well with the flour and baking soda and salt and everything else that we have in there. Gotta give my hands a quick rinse. This is the bulk of the prep here. So once this is in, we're going to be pouring in the buttermilk, and let's put this back over here and letting it sit for a little bit. Now you don't want to over process it, so I'm actually going to turn it down again. And this is just about the right texture. It's a little bit like sand, and you do not want to over process it. You want that butter to kind of be able to mix in there. So that should be pretty good. Alright, so we are going to, let's see here, transfer mixture to a large bowl. Okay, if we're going to be whisking, we probably should put it in a bowl. I was going to just leave it in that, but we will put it in the largest bowl that I have that's clean. because like I said, I've been doing a lot of baking and cooking, and my dishwasher has limited capacity, and I frankly have been too lazy to actually wash everything by hand. So we're going to put everything into this plastic bowl. Alrighty, and I'll set aside the food processor bowl to get cleaned. And we're going to pour in the buttermilk mixture. Just on top. Now, due to the lack of contrast here, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult than I would prefer to kind of show off the whisking, but I'm out of clear bowls. Alright, so just going to kind of whisk these together. Not trying to overmix or anything. Just trying to make sure that everything's gotten a chance to kind of make friends with everything else. I think that should be just about right. Alright, and now I'm going to set this aside. We're going to let it be for about 5 minutes. Alright, now just make sure that everything has a chance to combine and for the flavor to kind of come out. So, while we wait, we're going to get the sheet pan ready, and then we're going to pop it in the oven so that it will actually heat up and we'll be able to get a nice amount of heat. We'll start baking the pancakes immediately as soon as they get poured in. Let's see here. All right. So that softened butter is actually going to be for the sheet pan. And then let's see. I think for this one I'm supposed to use this size. A smaller size of sheet pan. There's a few different sheet pan sizes out there. And so for this we're using the smaller type. Yeah, that is not softened butter. We're going to soften that for an additional probably about 30 seconds. And I'm going to grab my pastry brush, which is pretty handy when you're doing things like spreading butter around. So you can kind of get it in everywhere quickly, and it transfers everything quite well. So we're going to end up greasing it with about a tablespoon of butter-ish. Line it with parchment paper. Then we're going to be putting more butter on top. See, that is still not quite ready. Let me see if I can figure out why it's doing that. We'll just put it on there for another moment or two. Let's see, parchment paper. Parchment paper is one of the best things ever. I stand by that. Anyone that doesn't agree is welcome to fight me. I want that on there. I'm just trimming this out now to get the best fit possible. Yeah, I think that'll be pretty good. That butter is extremely hot, and I did not use a hot pad to pick it up, so don't repeat my mistake, because that hurt. Thought if it got that hot, surely it would just explode. Apparently not. Alright. Let's get this in here, just make sure that this pan is thoroughly buttered up. There's a good reason for using butter underneath parchment paper. I don't remember what it is, but I know that I read something about it at some point. It was explained very logically to me. I remember walking, or clicking away from it was probably a website. I was like, okay, yeah, that makes complete sense. Now I will make sure that I always remember that. And now I've got absolutely no idea. Just gonna very carefully slide that on there, not touching any more than is absolutely required to avoid burning myself again. Because it's not fun. And we'll lay this down. Maybe it's because it helps the parchment paper stick. I don't remember. It's helping it stick or something. Maybe it might have been like heat transfer. I don't know. Alright. We're going to add in all of this to make sure that the parchment paper is thoroughly greased. And this is, kind of a component of the pancakes themselves, so we do want to make sure that we have plenty. Especially along the sides, because we don't want to have it stick too much. I might trim down this side just a little bit too much. But this is really what a pastry brush is just really awesome for. Because you can, really kind of get it spreading around really well without, wasting too much. Alright. I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and toss this into the oven for just a minute or two so that everything can kind of get nice and hot. Which is exactly what we want. Alright, so while that is working, I'm going to start working on the bacon. Which for this, we're going to be doing oven bacon. Because I've been told that's the best kind of bacon. For reasons. I am honestly not entirely certain myself. I do not spend a lot of time making bacon. It's not a food I have a ton of, but I acquired some recently and made it using this method, and yeah, it's pretty good. So this bacon is from Imperfect Foods once again. So instead of being full strips of bacon, because I've got ethical concerns about bacon, but instead of being full strips, this is instead essentially the offcuts. So they've already made the bacon. This is the stuff that would otherwise just kind of get thrown away, or presumably turned into sausage or something. Not really entirely certain what they do with bacon offcuts. As a result, you won't see any of the big strips or anything. But it does have some pretty nice marbling. There's a decent amount of nice fat on this. And we're putting it on a rack so that it doesn't fry, it instead kind of crisps, which I have been told by people who are far more into bacon than myself that is the proper way to do it. It's a very thick piece. Betting this bit will probably take longer to cook than all the rest. And we're just finishing off this package. It ended up being about 2 servings worth of bacon, which is pretty decent for bacon, I think. And it's about right for me because I don't, like I said, I don't really have a ton, so. It worked out quite well. Yep, that's just one big piece. All right. Wash all that oil off my hands for all the fat. And I'm going to probably do a quick swapperoo. Maybe I'll just put the bacon on the lower rack. Let it cook a little bit longer. Should be okay. Yep, that'll be good. Alright, meanwhile, our pan here is ready. So what we're going to be doing is quickly kind of tip everything around. We're going to add in the rest of our melted butter here. I know it does seem like I'm going heavy on the melted butter, but I promise you this is what the recipe calls for. It will be delicious. So we just want this to make sure we get it all around. And it's all bubbling, which is perfect. I'm going to grab our mixture. I'm going to give it a quick stir, and I am off camera right now, but it has puffed up a little bit, so we're just giving it a quick mix. We're going to go ahead, just pour this in. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Ryan, you have forgotten the chocolate chips. And I mean, maybe I have, maybe I haven't, but they weren't going to come in till now anyway. We're going to be putting them on top, so that they'll have time to kind of percolate down through the pancakes instead of all kind of drifting to the bottom. We're going to just spread these out. This does look like I did indeed get the right size of pan, which is very good for me. And we're going to try and work quickly here because it is cooking already. And we're going to grab chocolate chips. I just have a big box of chocolate chips that I just kind of keep around. We're just going to end up with about 3/4 of a cup or so. They call for mini chocolate chips. I say that mini chocolate chips are great, but you know what's even better? A mixture of mini chocolate chips and bigger chocolate chips, and if you have more than what you strictly speaking need to have. So I'm definitely putting in probably a little bit extra, and I am mixing both regular sized and mini chocolate chips, trying to make sure that no matter where you go, you will have lots of chocolate upon which to nom. And I think that should be good, and we're going to get this away. I'm going to get this into the oven. This will take about 13 to 15 minutes. Oh, that bacon is sounding amazing and smelling so good. I am pretty happy with that. I wasn't entirely certain if I was going to do the bacon, but I think I'm glad that I am. All right, now it's a kind of a waiting game. We're going to wait another 13 to 15 minutes. So, hey Google, set a timer for 13 minutes.
Okay, 13 minutes. And we're starting now.
Awesome. And while we wait, let's see. Then we're going to be broiling it. Awesome. Cool. So now we're going to work on the eggs, because eggs are a good thing to have. And to do that, let me see if I can... Oh, I think that the app crashed again. I was having some stuttering problems with the other app that I used to stream off of this phone. I think it's giving DroidCam OBS a shot again. I think it crashed again. Alright, should be up now. So we're going to transition to it. I'm going to try and keep an eye on it. And if it looks to me like it's not updating, I might take a minute to flip back to the other app. I just really want this one to work. So I keep trying it. But, alright, so, eggs. We're going to do eggs, and I'm going to do just some scrambled eggs, because scrambled eggs are pretty great. I'm not going to do anything particularly special with them. But I had a few people ask me how I did scrambled eggs, and I don't think that I've showed that before outside of, like... I guess I did with the fried rice. But for this, we're actually going to use a fairly decent number of eggs, because it's kind of nice to have just like a ton of eggs to go along with your pancakes. And we're going to put these into, where did I used all of my things up, didn't I? Drat. Okay, well, I've still got this mixing cup, this measuring cup here. It's got a little bit of milk left in it, but that's not a big deal. Just going to break in our eggs. I always feel like quoting Lord of the Rings whenever I do this. I cannot do all of the fancy cracking stuff with one hand. I greatly admire those who can. Never sat down to do it myself. I'll learn eventually. Probably. Maybe. I don't know. Alright. Those are our eggs. And actually, I think I should probably mention here that Kenji Lopez has a few things to say about eggs, as I recall. Pretty sure he does. I think it was him. It was either him or someone else. If it's someone else, that doesn't much matter, but let me grab the food lab here, because it was interesting. Let me double check, because I think he had like the absolute best eggs. Eggs, dairy, the science of breakfast, 83. The food lab, I refer back to it like all the time because it is so freaking good. It is one of the best cookbooks I have ever read. I've read a lot of cookbooks. But it is just astounding how good it is. Highly, highly, highly recommend it to everyone. So here we're just going to look at his light and fluffy scrambled eggs, I think. 21. Which is, you get a bunch of eggs, you put in salt and milk, you whisk it for a while. He recommends at least 15 minutes, and I've done it, and they are amazing. I am usually too impatient for that. So we are not going to be doing it for 15 minutes. But we are going to get our eggs. We are going to get some... I'm only using 6 eggs instead of 8, so I'm cutting back a little bit on like the salt and some of the other things. And then we're going to get a little bit of whole milk, which in this case, of course, is almond milk. Put in a little bit more than that. That's probably pretty good. About 2 tablespoons or so. Approximately. Man, that bacon smells amazing. Fork, fork, fork. There's a fork. Alright, we're just going to kind of whisk this up as well as we can inside of this measuring cup. Just trying to get everything kind of homogeneous and creamy. The point of this is to break down some of those proteins, I think, and to kind of get them to be a little bit creamier, which is exactly what you want for scrambled eggs. All right. Just making sure these are all nicely whisked up. I think that's pretty good. Alright, now we're just going to sit and watch these for a minute. Probably not that long because I am kind of impatient. But at least for a couple moments here. Patience is one of those things that, if unlike me you have patience, then you will be rewarded. Speaking of things that, patience will be rewarded, I'm going to take a look at this bacon. Oh man, that is looking amazing. So are the pancakes. Alright, while I wait for that, for just another minute or two, we're going to go back over to the stove and we're going to work on getting our pan nice and hot, getting the butter in here, to start making the rest of the eggs. So I'm using the back burner here because it's a big one, so it's a little lower temperature. So if you're cooking with gas or with a different stove, which I presume you are, and if you aren't using a different stove, then what are you doing in my house? Get about a tablespoon of butter in there. Whack this up on the high until everything starts melting. Grab a spatula. We'll use this one, I think. I went from having like 1 or 2 spatulas to like 15 of them in approximately 3 days. It was probably a little bit longer than that, but it feels like it was only about 3 days. But we're gonna get this butter fully melted and kind of get it all foamy. And then we'll be putting in the eggs and cooking them. We're just gonna make sure this gets everywhere. Once the pan is a little bit hotter, we'll drop it off of high, but yeah, probably about now. Drop it off onto medium high. Maybe medium high. We're just going to make sure that this gets everywhere. Suppose I probably should have titled this video something more along the lines of, how to make or making sheet pan chocolate chip pancakes and other things that you can do at breakfast. Alright. Just going to whisk this up again, make sure everything's all nicely kind of stirred up. Then go ahead and pour this in. All right, and now we're just going to let it kind of go like this. I'm going to bump the heat up again because I think I dropped a little bit too far. We're just going to kind of stir gently. Try and make sure we scrape up any curds or anything that form on the bottom so that everything kind of finishes cooking at the same time. We don't have any burned pieces and everything is nicely scrambled. I really feel like this bit here didn't get properly whisked. And that's one of the things that if you actually do let it sit, that'll help. Suppose I probably could have started it off with the eggs at the start of the video and then they would have had some proper time to sit, but we'll just say this is inspired. Oh, I think the app is dying. I'm looking over here at, I don't know, maybe it was just a momentary glitch. I'm looking at the live view. Every now and then I see it stuttering. Since I'm using a remote desktop to monitor my computer where all of this video is being mixed together, I'm never 100% certain. What I should probably end up doing is record all of these, and then if I need to later I can upload a recording. But I've never quite gotten around to that. You can see we've got some of the I guess they're curds, egg curds forming along the bottom of the pan. We're just kind of scraping those up. Do this with a whisk as well. I think that most of these things will actually be out at approximately the same time for once. Bacon's not making as much sound, which means that most of the fat's probably dripped down, so it's just finishing up and getting extra crispy, which I like crispy bacon, so I'm pretty happy with that. We've got about another 25 seconds on the pancakes. Just kind of folding this in, scraping along the bottom. Try to keep everything kind of going. Stop. Let's check on the pancakes here. Those are looking quite good. They may have slightly dripped a little bit over there. I think they might need another minute or two. Hey Google, set a timer for 1 minute.
1 minute, starting now.
All right. We'll be finishing those pancakes off underneath the broiler, which I will be doing in about a minute. These eggs are setting fast. Don't know that they'll be fully done by the time that minute is up, but they should be getting a lot closer. They just kind of come together. Stop. Alright, I'm going to kick the broiler on. Just to kind of let that go. I'm kind of wishing I had another place to stand that wasn't directly in front of this door. Well, the app crashed again. I'll figure this out at some point eventually, probably. In the meantime, I'm getting pretty good at restarting it pretty fast. The eggs are almost done. Just a few more turns, making sure nothing kind of burns. You want them to be kind of soft. You don't want to overcook them too much. And I think that that is looking pretty good. Kind of breaking them up a little bit. There we go. All right. Kill the heat, move it off the burner. And time to look at these pancakes, which it's just the top's getting nice and golden brown now. Not really anything I can show you. I'm just kind of monitoring it. I have the door open so that they don't accidentally burn or anything, or that parchment paper doesn't catch on fire. If it does, at least I can see it. I'm going to quickly turn these around because they're kind of browning unevenly. Should probably, I could have put them on an upper rack, but right now I've got one of my racks in a lower position and one of my racks in an upper position. Or in a middle position, rather. I think that's looking pretty good. Alright, I'm going to probably pull these out. See, is this going to be too hot? That's kind of cooled down. It's amazing how fast that starts to cool down. We're going to get in here. This. You can see I've got some of the uneven browning. Drop that back to bake for another minute or two. What we're going to be doing is we're going to let these cool, because if we try cutting them right now, they'll still be a very liquidy mess, and we need them to cool down a bit before we can do anything with them. They are definitely looking pretty good though. Maybe a little bit pale over here. That's because I didn't turn it fast enough. But the sides over here are looking just great. They've really puffed up nicely. And I'm pretty impressed by their texture. Very, very hot chocolate chips. Alright, I'm going to move this over to the cutting board. And what we're going to do is I'm going to attempt at least to transfer this onto the cutting board to help it cool a little bit faster. So also so that we can serve this a little bit more easily. Right. Drop the pan into the sink so that it doesn't touch anything and catch anything on fire. Again, we're just going to let this kind of sit. This is where some oil or some butter pooled up here on the edges, which did cause them to not sink or to not puff up as much. They kind of fried a little bit more than puffing. Let's check in on the bacon and see how that's doing. It's definitely looking pretty good. Just pulling that out to take a quick peek at it. I grab a fork. Let me swap this back over here. Like I said, I am definitely not a bacon expert. It's kind of crispy. A lot of that fat has kind of rendered away, which is what we wanted. Well, app crashed again. I'll get it in a second. Looks like once it crashes once, it just starts crashing way more often, which is disappointing. But it is in beta, and I do know that the app developer is actively working on it, so hopefully that will not last. Let me send them some crash logs. Alright, I think that these are going to be pretty good. These are just a side thing, so I'm not too concerned about having too much. I was really just looking to finish off that pack. We've got our eggs over here. I'm just going to give them another quick turn because the pan was still hot and I don't want them to burn or anything else. I think it's time to start plating everything up. We're going to do that over here first by cutting up our delicious looking pancakes. I think that they've probably, yeah, they're still warm but not too hot. I'm just going to come through with a nice knife, kind of cut them up. Are they on the inside? Yeah, that's nice and fluffy. I'm slicing, we're trying to remember to slice rather than just push. We're going to probably do 3 and 3. Alright, those are looking pretty delicious to me. Grab a plate. Gonna grab a spatula thing. I'll grab one of these center pieces here. Got that. I'm gonna get some eggs. A few more eggs. And then I think some bacon. Not a lot, just some. And a fork so I can actually eat this. Alright, so here's the full thing. I'm really liking that amount of puff there. Let's see how it tastes. Yep, those are pretty good pancakes. The eggs, of course, taste great. Eggs always taste great. And that bacon's pretty good too. Well, I think that I'm going to go and I'm going to enjoy the rest of this. So thank you guys for watching. Take care, and I will see you next time.